The New York Times reported Washington, as Democrats warily prepared to negotiate an immigration deal with President Trump, they face an unexpected political foe. Many of the 800,000 young, undocumented immigrants threatened with deportation whom they are championing. The pressure from some immigrant activists to reject any compromise that would tighten border security has frustrated Democratic leaders, who recognize the political risks of being labeled the party of open borders, a potentially lethal tag as they seek to regain support from working-class voters across the Midwest. Fearful of concessions to Mr. Trump that could increase immigration enforcement aimed at their families and friends, the activists are targeting Democratic congressional leaders with loud political protests. And Democratic politicians may be vulnerable. They have already shifted to the left on a number of issues, such as health care, as they try to take advantage of liberal fervor stoked by the Trump era. The admission comes too late for Hillary Clinton, who lost the 2016 election after adopting a pro-amnesty progressive policy in 2016. That far-left policy allowed President Donald Trump to champion a pro-American policy on immigration, netting him the three blue wall states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Before the 2016 election, Democrats ignored polling evidence that Midwest voters strongly opposed the party's pro-immigration policies. The 690,000 current beneficiaries of former President Barack Obama's 2012 Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals amnesty has been given much sympathetic coverage and support by Democratic legislators, progressive activists, and establishment journalists. For example, many Democrats and reporters describe the illegals as dreamers. So the DACA illegals are pushing a huge amnesty bill, titled the DREAM Act, which would provide a fast-track amnesty for at least 3 million people. They are also demanding a clean DREAM Act without any compromise that might curb future immigration, fund a border wall or repatriate other illegals, or even the Merit Immigration Reform RAISE Act, which would raise Americans' wages. DACA illegals told Breitbart News that they also want to bring in more of their relatives, including their parents, via chain migration, and oppose any amnesty for reform political compromise that might build up border defenses and enforcement improvements to stop the next wave of migrants hoping to be part of the next amnesty deal in 10 or 15 years. Pro-amnesty advocates at the White House, September 5, 2017. The financial costs for Americans of this expanding, no-strings amnesty agenda are huge. For example, the cost of an amnesty for the first 3 million would likely reach $115 billion in the first decade in just Obamacare costs. That's a huge problem for Democrats, because polls show that Americans want to be nice to the young illegals, but they also strongly oppose amnesties which threaten Americans' jobs, wages, and communities. The NIT provides a quote from one Democratic political consultant who understands that many Democrats, including African Americans, don't like small or large amnesties. Democrats need to be mindful, not just of white working-class voters but all voters, said Cornell Belcher, who worked as one of President Barack Obama's pollsters during his 2008 presidential campaign. Democrats have to thread a fine needle, he said, because polls show that voters broadly feel as though their borders need to be more secure. That problem was spotlighted by California radio host Kathleen Wells, who challenged pro-amnesty Democrats on September 26 to defend their support for high levels of immigration. The Democratic legislators declined to explain why mass immigration help African Americans. Read the NIT article here.